Welcome to this presentation on climate cares. There is now a consensus that climate change is not just an ecological crisis, but indeed a public health crisis. Yet the mental health impacts of climate change have received comparatively little attention. Our ability to effectively address this looming mental health crisis is impeded by limited scientific evidence, insufficient knowledge about potential interventions, and a lack of engagement at the policy level. With Climate Cares, we aim to tackle all three of these issues, that is, building an empirical evidence base, designing and testing interventions to support vulnerable individuals, and influencing policy and health systems change. Today, we want to share with you the preliminary results from our first research study entitled Changing Worlds, in which we focused on young people as a particularly vulnerable group to the mental health impacts of climate change. The study involved a UK-wide online survey, which was open from August to October 2020, and was focused on 16 to 24-year-olds. We asked them questions about their mental health, their experiences with climate change and with COVID-19, what their hopes and fears for the future were, and their perceived agency in tackling issues such as climate change and COVID-19. There were a few notable observations when we compared young people's perspectives on and their psychological responses to, on the one hand, the pandemic, and on the other hand, climate change. So first, despite the relatively distant effects of climate change for young people in the UK and the absence of significant interference in their daily lives, overall distress associated with climate change was slightly but significantly more pronounced. This seemed to be largely driven by greater feelings of guilt and responsibility over the climate crisis than over COVID-19. A sense of loss or grief was more common in response to the pandemic. Secondly, we also found that the stress over the two crises increased among those with moderate to severe anxiety symptoms. But interestingly, for those experiencing no to very mild anxiety, climate change was perceived as a significantly greater source of distress than the pandemic. Young people in our survey felt less agency with regard to climate change. In particular, they indicated that they were less aware of what they could do against climate change and less capable of enacting change. Strikingly, for both crises, young people felt that they lacked control. From this, we may conclude that interventions that focus on developing agency and resilience may be needed in this particular group, and perhaps even more so in those already experiencing symptoms of anxiety. We welcome any questions and comments and are happy to provide further detail on the study in the Q&A session. Thank you for your attention on behalf of the entire Climate Cares team.